This conference will
Yes,
now
sir.
be recorded.
Okay. So today is going to be the important session in context of understanding how we can handle manipulate the data. Few of the core data handling techniques is what we are going to learn today. So I will first of all summarize what are all the activities we can think and can have there in the context of data handling part. Because in the last class, we already discussed the data importing. So recap from the last session. So we discussed NumPy, pandas, data structure of NumPy and pandas. So what are the data structures we have, guys? We could see we have series and data frame in pandas.
NDR and NDR2.
Yep. And in the NumPy we have NDRA and NDRA2. It is typically NDRA, so we can have two or like multidimensional. Like having said that part, when we are talking about data handling activities or data handling part, we need to rely upon pandas to the larger extent for all the basic needs. Does that make sense? So be it importing the data, we have some ready-made functions available and the syntax goes like read underscore xxxx. What do you mean by xxxx? Depending on the type and the extension of the file, we have some preloaded functions like read underscore CSV, read underscore Excel, read underscore SAS, and so on and so forth. Okay. Now, what I'm trying to say is that I have actually shared one complete folder with you guys in this way, which contains all the files required for you to use in your existing conversations in the last few sessions or any session going down the line. These are all the set of the files within which I would ask you to get through with the proper understanding of how importing the data. You can see I also have the RFM data, which I was asking you to get started with. So pick any of the file there from this set and start working on that so that you can understand how you can play with the data. This also contains few of the SAS data files like employees.sas7bdat, which you guys can try out importing there to make it a Python data frame. CSV files are already there, Excel files are already there. Does that make sense? Online guys, are you all with me? Perfect. Now, taking this entire conversation forward, once you think that you have imported the data, There comes few of the core steps like EDA. If you remember, I discussed this chart and the conversation right in the very first session as well. The core steps. What is EDA? Aditya, Akshay, Hitesh, Nikita.
Exploratory data analysis.
Exploratory data analysis, correct. Correct. So this is something like we call it an exploratory data analysis. This is more like an art and a style. That means how you can understand your data. Each one of you can have their own way of applying the different formulas and the functions. But the point is like it is the point where we have to understand the data using any of the available methodologies. Then you can have cleaning and processing the data, preparing the data, isn't it so? In that cleaning and preparing, you have thousands of the things to take care of, like missing values, outliers, duplicates. And when I'm talking about preparing the data, you can think of having the data, I mean, a new variable added, row or column being subset or filtered, isn't it so, guys? You can think of sorting the data, summarizing the data. When I say summarizing, that means grouping and appending, deleting the columns, merging, appending, binning, bucketing, and so on and so forth. Does that make sense? Amit, Akshay, Nikita, Hitesh, Aditya. These are all the areas what you absolutely need to know in order to get started with any sort of the data analysis. There in a platform, be it R or Python or SAS or anything like that. These are the basic steps you are generally doing in Microsoft Excel and in SQL as well, isn't it so?
Yes.
Perfect. So today's class would be focused on understanding and starting understanding all these things step by step. So I would first of all be not going into a theoretical way because you guys need to have a fresh start just to understand the way how Python works. So I will be first of all starting. I mean, this is going to be the absolute agenda for the class today, where I can prioritize and deprioritize few things. Like this is more like a detailed conversation. So we'll be taking that in a while. I will talk about the new variable, adding a new variable. But before that, I will also be talking about one of the core topic in the last class, which is like locks and iLocks. This is in context of the pandas series. This is as of now needs to be discussed at the very first place before I move on to the next part. So let me do one thing. First of all, I will have my data into the picture so that I can ask you to understand what each of these things are. So we have already seen one thing. So I will keep on having the conversation on the same notebook file so that we can have an archive and a history of that and can use the same version in the next classes. All right. Now what I'm trying to say is you guys remember we discussed the indexing in list or tuple. Do you guys remember? Indexing based on square brackets. Akshay, Aditya, you
Yes,
remember that?
yeah.
Correct? So we will be taking this concept to a higher level based on the series. Series means the panda series I'm talking about. Okay, this is not a normal series I'm talking. It's a panda series because here comes a different flavor just to understand the indexing part. So this is the conversation I had in the last class. If you are there with me, correct? So I had a list L1 which I was able to convert that into a series. Yes or no? So let me have this conversation extended to a higher level now, adding one more cell there. Here we go. And and let me write the code. Sorry, it's okay. And shift enter, control enter. So let me have this code and walk you through the conversation what I had in the last class. Yes, I want to draw something there. And here we go. So I was having a list for an example, so as to convert, have a conversation on that part, and was having a member called 12, 23, 45, and so on and so forth, and was able to convert that with the panda series dot, with the name called p dot series, correct? So this was the member elements. Now, in this case, we do have some indexing already aligned with that, which is like getting started from 0 and 5. That means again we have indexing getting started from 0 to n minus 1. Just like the way we had there in the case of list and tuple. Are you all with me? So I will be doing this thing quickly for you once again so that I can take this conversation to a next level. Yeah, here we go. So we do have the actual indexing, just like the way we had in the case of list and tuple. Just a second, guys. My mate came in, so let me instruct him because I am living like a bachelor's life for a couple of days. So I need to instruct her what needs to be cooked or something like that. Okay, just give me and spare me for 30-40 seconds, and I will be back. Okay, sorry for that delay. Shall we start now? Perfect. So, okay. Now, what I was trying to convey is that this is the actual indexing in the same line what we had in the list in tuple starting from 0 to n minus 1. But we also have a concept and a reason for having the user defined indexing. So, if you will peep into this formula, you will get an idea that we have an additional attribute here called index, with the help of which you can have the user defined indexing. And let me tell you what does that really means. So along with converting this L1, I want to have my own indexing, and this indexing would be your own user defined names like A, comma, it could be any name, B, comma, C, comma, D, comma, E, comma, F. Okay, I have executed this line, and now after running this, you can clearly see that instead of getting the numbers, getting index as 0 to n minus 1, we are having the numbers in the form of the user defined names. This entire idea of having the actual indexing is called as ILOCs, and having a user defined indexing is called as locks. Now the question comes, why we are wasting our time to reading this ILOC and locks. So first of all, when you are not giving your locks any user defined names, originally your ILOCs is equals to locks. But if you are giving your own user defined names, your locks will be overridden to the actual name. So it's more like at the beginning, at this place, your locks are equals to ILOC. So it would be more like 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. But if you are passing on your own indexing, it would be overridden to A, B, C, D, and so on. So I have written this entire complete theory and the conversation for us to easily understand that. Give me a second so that we can just conclude this conversation. Here we go. So how you can access the elements from series, just like the way you are accessing them from the list or a tuple, obviously using the indexing part. But here in the case of series, we have two type of indexing called ILOCs, which is the actual indexing, and the locks, which are the user defined names. Typically, your default indexing obviously starts from 0 to n minus 1, which we call it as ILOC. And we can have our own user defined indexing as well, which we call it as locks. Originally or by default, your lock value is equals to the iLock, but user can give their own indexing called locks. When user gives their own indexing, then locks comes into the picture, but originally iLocks will remain unchanged. So even though you have locks A, B, C, D, E, but you have the original indexing being intact or unchanged. So kindly understand this thing, that your original indexing will not be impacted anyhow, be it whatever you guys are doing. Now,
Ankur, I have a small question here.
mhm.
Let's say we have more number of values than we have defined compared to the number of locks that we have defined. So in that particular case, when our user defined locks runs out, we will be having a numerical value which is I locks.
So you want to say you if you're passing indexing less than the original
Number of
number, is that what you are asking?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Let's say we have defined user from A,
So
B,
what you are
C,
saying
D.
is like no E and F, right? This is what you are saying.
Yeah.
So obviously, so six elements are there, and you are telling that I want to have indexing, so you have to have the indexing for every element then in this case. It cannot be a
Okay,
mix and
so
match of the user-defined indexing and the original indexing. Okay.
okay, so we do need to see how many values we have in a
Absolutely
list.
right.
Okay.
Yes, yes. And
Okay.
this can be retrieved with multiple ways. There is a function called length
Yeah.
and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyone having any doubt? Now the question comes, why locks and ilocks? I will reiterate this story. See this. Let us work around on this part. And okay, give me an let us give it a name called S2 is equals to this panda series. Okay. Now I can retrieve my elements S2 dot, I mean not dot really. So or maybe like I can do that. Two, you can clearly see I will have the third element which is 45. Got that? Having the indexing as 2 makes sense. But I could have also fetched an element instead of using 2. I could have used C there. Okay, or maybe just for the sake of your change, E let it be. Okay, so you can clearly see it is getting 56. Why? Because E is the name I have given to the element 56. Does that make sense? So typically, the way we write that is intentionally all the original indexing. If we are passing that with the position, we put that with the iLock, and user-defined indexing, we put that with log. Though you can directly retrieve the elements without mentioning this keyword called ilocks and logs. Now the question comes, why we really need to have that? Simply because going down the line, we will be using data frame and the table for the data handling purpose. So for the content based manipulation, what do you mean by content based manipulation? Let me tell you. And this is common in NumPy and data pandas, both of them. The idea of using this entire thing is to filter the data. Like I have L1 and I can easily, so first of all, let me write a comment actually. So what I'm trying to say is that both NumPy, array and series have the mechanism and the feature with the help of which you can play around with indexing using the true condition, which is a very interesting feature and an important one, of course. If I have the list L1, or maybe like now I should not deal about the list anymore. it is like I have a series SER1. Got it? So if I will say, give me the list of all those elements which are greater than 50. So you can directly compare that. And you are getting false, 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 false. So for the individual element, you are getting a binary outcome, a logical value in the form of true and false, whether that element is greater than 50 or not. Now I can use this feature to subset the data, just like the way I'm telling you, SER1. Got that? Anyone having any doubt with that? So you could see I got a set of only those elements which are greater than 50. Now the point is that where you can think of using ilogs and where you can think of logs. So it is actually required at the time of slicing the data. When I say slicing the data, actually you will be using the tables and the data frames going down the line. So during that scenario, you will be having a combination of row and column. So you have to give the names of the columns so as to subset the data. Like in the case of HR data, I have an HR employee data. Let me get this into the picture. Okay. So for the sake of your understanding, I'm putting HR.head as 2. So I have all these columns. You can actually retrieve the column names with the function called HR.columns. So can you see? This is the reason why we end up using one of the functions. So this will help me to copy paste the names of the columns rather than writing them. Make sense? So from this conversation, I can have like HR, and then I can use this indexing. So the way the indexing is done on the two-dimensional data, be it NumPy or a data frame, indexing on two-dimensional data is more like this, where comma is the deciding factor and anything before comma is a row level detail and anything after comma is a column level detail. Does that make sense? So you will be passing on an instruction, what are all the rows you are interested in, what are all the columns you are interested in. Does that make sense? Let us try to see this. So first of all, I should take that in the next one because I don't want to spoil the names of the columns actually. Control, not Control X. So first of all, I can give a small start how to access the data. Or typically a column. It could be accessed in two ways, guys. A, using the dot operator, or B, using the indexing. We'll talk about both of them. So HR and then dot, if you will press tab, you will get to have a variable names. So I can use all such variables like age. then age will be reflected. Individually, if you are using the dot operator, I need to mention deliberately that this will return series as an output. You can see it's a series, correct? You can also have the indexing component and mention the age. Now, if you are using the single variable, you will be having an age. But if you are passing this double brackets, then actually you will be getting a data frame. So I should have actually kept that separately. And you will get to know the reason of using the double bracket. So you can see the layout got changed. If you have this dark and the light color rows, this means this is a data frame now, actual table. The reason being of having a double bracket is because you can actually have multiple columns now, like salary. So this is more for a data frame. Now, what I was trying to originally convey is like here you are getting the data, but what about you are passing to whether you are getting the row or a column? Let us try to see this. So you got an error. Why you got an error, guys? Because there are syntactical issues, correct? It's a two-dimensional object and you are passing only one number. So you have to have a clarity what needs to be passed in. Let me show you. Hmm. So how about this idea? So I can start with a smaller one, like 2, maybe like, or maybe like this only, okay? Just to start with that. Mm-mm-mm. Okay, yeah. There at the time of data frame, you have to mention whether you want to have the lock or iLock. Here comes the actual scenario of using the locks and the iLocks. Got that? And because you are playing with the positions indexing, you have to mention locks. Like second row, you want to have all the columns. Does that make sense? What does that really means is, or let it be like this. So starting from 0 to 2, that means first 3 columns you will be getting there. Mhm. How many columns we have? Just a second. Sorry, my fault, guys. iLocks are the actual indexings in this case. Yeah, here we go. Can you see this? So locks are used when you are passing the data and filtering the data based on the column names. I will tell you the difference. So first of all, you are having an iLock, and based on that, you have retrieved the second row and the first 2 columns. If you are looking to get the data being filtered based on the, so treat it like this. Got that? First five rows and first two columns. Does that make sense to everyone? Now, if you are looking to have this data filtered based on the columns, generally we use column names, right? Now, if you are looking to have only these two columns, Control C, Control V here. Now you cannot use ilogs. Are you getting me? You have to have logs. Why? Because this column are the names and these are actually the index names. So your indexing could be row wise or a column wise. So typically this is being considered as the indexing. So instead of getting the number, you are passing the names of those indexes. So for that reason, you have to use logs. And if you are playing with the numerical values, you have to use ilogs. Does that make sense to everyone? Anyone having any doubt, question, concern with the use and the application of logs and ilogs?
No, not me.
Ankur, will it possible to pass the range instead of writing the column names? A
Range means?
dynamic,
Yes,
a
yes,
dynamic.
definitely. You can have, yeah, yeah. You can have any condition, any range. You can have anything there. Okay, this is something you can. Yeah, I mean, we can keep on extending and have any logic there into the picture.
So that range we need to define before, and if it yes, then how do we do that?
So there are
For
functions
example, I
called range. Yeah,
okay.
go ahead, please.
So for example, if I am would like to have the dynamic range for column A1 to D10, and further if any data been added, so I keep on getting that data. So the range should not be static; it should be dynamic, like the way we do in Excel.
There are some input functions with the help of which you can take the input from the user. As far as the dynamic ranges are concerned, uh, you you mean to say I need to whenever a new column is added, I want to take that into a picture. Is that what you are
Yeah,
saying?
I have a Excel file where there are certain businesses are inserting the data on daily basis, and my data model wants to pick the data and update my you know information or the new additional data into that. So my
Mm-hmm.
range is like that. Once the business enter the data, my range get dynamically picked that and then populated to the my POC or somewhere else. If I want to
Mm-hmm.
use the same logic here, I don't want to change, go back to Excel and change my range. I just dynamically pick that.
Okay, so yeah, there are ways to handle the data dynamically here in Python as well, but to be very true, we rarely use that. But if we want to find that logic, I probably have to spend some time there separately. But we'll be giving. So there is a concept of dynamic ranges there in Python as well. But I need to identify the right way and having that same example there to be discussed. So can take that offline any point of time there later on. Once we are thorough with the basic data handling activities. Okay.
Okay.
Anyone in this batch having any doubt with the iLogs and logs so far? All right, girls. Uh, so let us now move forward. Because we have discussed the logs and iLogs, let us have some fun around this. Just a second. Okay, so let me first of all have this. Just a second. So I want to have the records only where the designation is analyst. How we can do that? Any idea, guys? Online, guys? How I can do that? I just want to
Using
have only
log,
those records. Yeah. So HR dot
ilogs.
log.
logs or ilogs. So you can
Uh,
try both of them.
Ilog.
Huh? You can try both of them. Let us start from ilog. Okay. Then square brackets. Go ahead, please.
Designation.
Designation. So here we have a slightly tricky one. You cannot directly use designation. You actually have to mention like
Okay.
HR dot
Row.
designation. Okay.
Okay. HR.
Dot designation.
Double equals to sign.
Perfect. And then
Analyst.
analyst. What else?
Uh, and then also have to define how many rows we need. No,
This is only for
columns.
rows, isn't it, sir? This is
Yeah,
only
yeah,
for
it is
rows
for
you are
rows.
mentioning. Yeah,
And
correct. Then comma.
and
So
then
comma is the deciding factor. So I'm done with the rows, correct?
yeah,
Now after that is the column.
what
So you want to have
you
all
may
the
need.
columns?
Yeah, or it's specific. Then you'll have to define that.
Perfect.
So here it'll show all the columns.
Yes. So let us run this. Just a second, guys. It's yeah. Go ahead, please. Yeah, I got some error. What is so?
We need to use log here because we are using column name designation rather than the column number.
Y- Yes,
Okay. Is that what you are saying?
Yeah.
yes,
Wow, fantastic. So one thing as a thumb rule, you can see whenever you are passing this condition and using a name there, generally we do use that. So for that reason, we often end up using the logs. So it's the real reason of using and having a logs. More prominently, you will end up using the columns. So because we hardly use the positions of the columns, we actually play with the actual names in the data. So for that reason, logs comes as a part and parcel of this. So does that make sense to everyone?
yes,
so basically, in
So
nutshell, log is label based, where we
yes,
specify the row and columns, and ilogs, uh, ilogs is the index based.
absolutely. That's correct, Anshul.
Oh,
Uh, uh, Ankur, if I want to have another value there, senior analyst, then I'll place a comma in between and then add senior analyst, or is there any other way?
Fantastic. Is it Hitesh I'm talking with?
Yes,
Hitesh, I mean, can you give a thought for this on 30 for 30 seconds and can come up with an answer for yourself? I would be happy to get this input from your side only. Just think about it. I was thought for 30 seconds. So
sure.
HR is equals to analyst or senior analyst you are asking for, right? Or is the
Yeah.
keyword. And we have understood the logical operators, isn't it so? And
Mm-hmm.
or not. So here you will end up using or operator. Or operator is defined with the pipe operator. So you will end up using pipe.
Okay. Yeah.
Correct. Moreover,
Mm-hmm.
your question could have been more better in terms of like, what if Ankur, I have more than 5 or 6 designations to be filtered out of the multiple, like, let's forget about designation. Let it be like location. So look, we can have 30, 40, 50 locations and you want to have the data for 10 locations. So now your answer would now, so here everyone kindly understand this, guys. So what Hitesh is asking is appropriate in a larger extent that you can have thousands of the situations to deal with. Not only with this, the data what I'm talking about, but going down the line, you can have anything. So for that reason, your understanding with the data and more prominently your understanding with excellent SQL should help you in that context. Make sense? Like I am saying that you can have a location where you may have 50 different city names, and I am asking you to get 10 locations being filtered. So again, with that said part, are you going to have or conditions being implemented 10 times? Like HR location is equals to Delhi, then or location is equals to Mumbai, or location is equals to Chennai, or location is equals to Vizag, location is equals to Meerut and Banaras and so on, Bangalore, Hyderabad. So 10 times you are like putting on operator. No, you have
No.
somewhere in your mind that there must be some better mechanism. We do have in SQL, तो Python में नहीं होना चाहिए क्या? Like in operator, got that?
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
everyone in this batch understands in operator, right? So in operator is in operator, be it being used in R or SAS or Python or SQL. ठीक है? So अब वो हमने डिस्कस किया है या नहीं किया ट्रेनिंग में hardly matters. But point is there has to be something there for you to be used. I hope this thought process is clear.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Okay. So I can have thousands of the examples, but I would ask you to, I mean, I can have it right here as well. Like either designation is analyst and you can have and operator as well. For that, I have to put it like this. And the unit is equals to finance. So this is the another condition. And you have to have it as a one single condition before row. So now you have only those rows where analyst is the designation and finance is the unit. Got that? And for that reason, I have used AND operator. Okay, Hitesh and everyone, does that matter? And does that make sense? If you
Yes.
want to
Yes.
have the limited columns into the picture. So, I mean, I can have thousands of the scenarios to talk about, but there is no point for us to waste our time just to make some small changes. This is something a self-exploratory one. I can have it more like now I can if I have to say that the columns could also be put mentioned there. So obviously I can have columns, right? What is this? Now you have only three columns: designation, unit, and okay. I had just mentioned designation twice. You can remove that as well, just for the sake of your understanding. Okay, got that? Anyone having any doubt with this? Now, if you want to have only few records, you can even put it like head of two, just to see only two. So this is the advantage of Python, right? So you can keep on extending the logic. This is just to print that, okay? This is like subsetting, actual subsetting, being called as content-based filtering.
Okay, one more clarification.
Mhm.
How would you differentiate using this lock and ilock where we are getting data for row and columns from SQLs? Is that the same data we are achieving it or the same object? If my object is just to retrieve the data, how does this lock and ilock is helping other than using SQL?
Okay, got that. Just a second.
Mhm.
All right, Anshul, getting back to your query, if I'm able to understand your problem statement, so I the very first thing which comes into my mind is like you are concerned about getting the data process with being retrieved from SQL. If that is correct, so first of all, I would like to clarify this thing that we are using Python as a platform, and wherever the data you are getting from initially or originally or primarily, that is now a closed chapter. So I could have my data in coming from the CSV file or from the Excel file or from the Oracle database or from the SQL database. Now, once that data has been captured into a Python in a form of a data frame of Panda, that is static one. So your SQL, CSV, Excel has gone out of the picture. Whatever the rules and the regulations we are understanding here is what only goes to be applied there. Make sense?
Mm, no. So you mean to say we cannot use any RDBMS concept in Python?
No. Python is a platform, a programming language. We are using it for the data science perspective. We cannot have the data science, I mean, we cannot have the RDBMS concept there. Oh, sorry.
So, so if my data source is either Axis or SQL, where where my uh, transformation layer is being created. Now, if I say ETL, so my transformation layer is created in my data source. Now the only load is pending. The load I have taken in Python. So now if I do want to do any DML concept or any manipulations, we have to go through with this lock and ilock process.
Absolutely. See, SQL and Oracle is a different architecture altogether where you have the features available to manage the data. Okay, when I say data, that means more about storing the data and to retrieve that. Here we have the tools and techniques in Python and in R for cleaning and preparing. Basically, you are here for manipulating the data so that you can have some interpretations and number crunching there. So as far as your name, I mean, we have some like nomenclatures, right? Like normalization techniques there in SQL or Oracle. Normalization one, normalization two, normalization three. Even, I mean, if just to sum up with the overall conversation, I should, we really don't have any core concept of primary key there in Python. And without primary key, you cannot move even an inch there in Oracle or SQL, right? That's the very first thing you should have in place, isn't it, sir?
Mhm.
So we don't have any rule, any convention, any limitation of primary key or something like that, because we are actually not talking about storing and managing the data. It's all about management you are talking about, correct? So we are here not for managing the data.
But in retrieval, we will always go through with this lock and unlock process. That's what.
Absolutely. Right. That's correct.
Okay.
Okay.
So just one more thing. I'm creating one data library model where my students are getting issues, uh, books every day, and that data I have inserted. That data model is always that data is already in my data source, but somehow I need to make some filtrations, like this student from this place, from this address, through form. Probably I will giving the inputs and then retrieve the data. Now this condition where I have put in some where condition, like in this is the address, this is the student, this is the class, that is goes as a where condition through iLog and get the data from data source for us.
Yeah, we can have some forms, and you can store those values in the object as a part and parcel of your process flow and the logic, and can integrate there. But the way I am now telling is like the very initial one, just to use that indexing concept to filter the data. But this is not the only way to filter the data. You have some ready-made functions also available, like filter function is there coming from the pandas package, which you can directly use. Okay. So here is to subset and slice the data. So there is a difference between what I'm talking. It's more like slicing the data, whether I can slice the rows or the columns, going some basic conditions. But there are some dedicated features available for filtering the data as well. And to handle the columns, we may have some thousands of the other functions available.
And we can use all the SQL properties in lock and iLog, like group by, aggregate functions.
Absolutely. I mean, not only in Python, I mean, you have those features in SAS or in R as well. So without that, you cannot move on
Yes,
anything.
yes.
But yeah, you cannot think of creating views and something like that. Views वगैरह नहीं possible है, right?
Mhm.
So views can anyhow not be possible there in Python or R. But yeah, the basic data retrieval queries like some French waiters grow healthy oranges, that has to be for sure there in any of the platforms there. Okay, I mean this is like very
No, I just wanted to make myself aware that this is achievable, and if yes, then how it should be.
uh, which one? Sorry, I just missed the
No, no,
last part.
no.
And
My intention was to ask you that the substitute of SQL in a log and iLog, just to make myself aware that this
okay.
is achievable, but through this way.
Yeah. So this is just a way of slicing the data, but you
Yeah.
have thousands of the things like you would be having filter function. So everything in R and Python, just make a note there, okay? As a thumb rule, either you are taking the classes or not, you are still on your toes now, so as to get started working on any of the activity. But the point
Mhm.
is, in R and Python, have everything has to be done with the function, and those function comes with certain one or the another package. So you just need to look after the right function to be used to get the task done. That's it. And for that, you really need not to learn the functions. It's all about what needs to be done. If you have that idea, you are almost done with the job. And for all those reasons only, I gave you these problem statements as a beginner so that you can think about that and can start looking into the solution. How many of you have started working on these two situations?
I uh,
So okay, so this is the weekend, guys. I would appreciate if you are taking some time out, at least 2 hours, this Saturday and Sunday, and start looking into the way how you can come up with these situations and the solutions. Because as of now, by end of the session today, you would be able to learn all those basic things, whatever it is required for you to be known. That's it. Okay. So if I'm saying that, find like sample super. So this could be your task one actually. Okay, this is comparatively more easy. So I can change the priority. So first of all, try to attempt this, finding the total superstores. This is interesting, and I would say must to crack this. it is a proper business sense with the reason that you have an Excel file, you would be able to learn the nitty-gritties of how to deal with the function because I told you how to read the CSV file. And in that sense, you will have thousands of the situations. First of all, there is an Excel file. The question comes, can I read the Excel file? Because sir ने तो बताया नहीं है. Correct, Nikita? अब sir ने तो CSV file बताया खाली. How I can read the Excel file? So there is the chance. So for that reason, you have to search out the way how you can read the Excel file, correct? Moreover, the problem are still not getting away from your track. The Excel file, what you are supposed to use in this case will be having three sheets, not one. It would be having three sheets being called as order, return, and people. If you will directly be using this function called read underscore Excel, even though you have searched into the Google or somewhere else, you would be able to learn the data. But the question comes, that function will only be reading the very first sheet. How come I would be able to read the remaining two sheets? There comes again a thought process कि सर ने तो चलो मैंने खुद से देख भी लिया कि read underscore Excel is the formula, but ये तो अभी भी काम नहीं बन रहा है. Correct, Nikita? So this is all about to develop a thought process how you can come up with the final outcome. Why? Because at each and every place you have to think about the situation. When I say situation, that means the problem statement, and have to find out the way to get this thing done and implemented using the Python. And for that reason, my hint would be, this is a generic hint, guys. Hint would be number one, think about the requirement. Number two, find the way, or I would say algorithm, algo or logic, okay? And third, then means after 1 and 2, then either Google, which is preferred way, or wait for the next class and waste your time sitting idle. So which one is the preferred way in the third option, Nikita? It's better complete the first two part and then instantly Google out the way to get this thing done in Python. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Akshay. So the reason why I'm
Yes,
telling you all these
yes.
stories because, okay, yeah. In Python, I could have added one more thing. Like once you are aware of these things, help window is important. Okay, help window is still very important. So everyone now understands how to use the help window in Python, correct? So all these three steps are actually going to be used for both of these two tasks. Is the only reason why I have written this. And this is not only for this task because this is more about developing a thought process. Being a data scientist, it is more important to have an approach being developed rather than being learning the different things. Today you can have the name of various functions in your mind because you are actually learning and working on Python, but tomorrow going down the line, who knows, you will be having a gap of 1 or 2 months and you are nowhere touching the Python in that tenure. So are you going to say that you haven't worked on Python since so long? No. इन द इंडस्ट्री तो कई बार ऐसा होता है, हितेश कैन अंडरस्टैंड दिस थिंग कि अगर आपने करियर में एक भी बार किसी भी चीज पे काम किया, यू आर बीइंग सपोज्ड टू बी एसएमई फॉर दैट पर्टिकुलर जॉब, इजंट इट सो हितेश?
Yeah, right.
आपने अगर उसको खाली देखा भी है तो यू आर बीइंग ब्रांडेड एज एन एसएमई इन फ्रंट ऑफ द क्लाइंट कि वी हैव एन एसएमई इन आवर टीम. सो यू हैव टू बी ऑन योर टोज ऑलवेज. एसएमई बना दिया जाता है आपको बातों बातों में, आपको पता भी नहीं चलता कि आप कब एसएमई बन जा रहा है.
not only me, Addy, Amit,
I
Chandra, or Dheeraj, everybody has, I believe, faced
yeah.
that situation.
Yeah. In fact, you won't believe ki like matlab, it's like very bad and the good experience both. There, like in the very first organization, there was a project specific certification. Each and everyone has to be cleared, and this that was a very tricky and very messy engagement. So the ritual started from me because I was the junior most one, और वो दो बार में clear नहीं हुआ. So for that reason, my senior engagement manager in USA I'm talking about, he was like कि अंकुर इसको clear कर लो, client को बहुत हमें बताना है, problem हो रहा है. वो काफी rude रहते थे फिर इस चक्कर में. और फिर मैंने उसको थर्ड अटेम्प्ट में क्लियर कर पाया. सो पहले तो मेरे को काफी क्रिप करते थे लाइक अंकुर ये नहीं हो रहा है, आपको टाइम निकालना पड़ेगा और ये है वो है एक्स एक्स वाई जी. और द डे व्हेन आई क्लियर दैट इट वाज लाइक मुझे भी नहीं पता चला कि द वंडर्स आई हैव क्रिएटेड. क्लाइंट के आगे इतने बड़े बड़े मेल और कहाँ कहाँ तक. नाउ वी हैव अ वेरी फर्स्ट एसएमई, ही इज द चैंपियन ऑफ ब्ला ब्ला ब्ला. मतलब एक दिन पहले से तक तो बुराइयां चल रही थी, एक दिन बाद से ही सब कुछ अच्छा अच्छा से एकदम से हो गया. द मोमेंट दैट सर्टिफिकेशन गॉट क्लियर्ड.
True.
So those managers also got changed. So this happens like. All right. So, Hitesh, I'm afraid why your mic is always on green color, even though there's no background noises coming from your side.
Because I have a control in my headset
Oh,
separate.
okay. All right. So I think this is clear, and I would recommend, personally recommend you to attempt these two things and would expect the answer and the solution by at least Wednesday. Who all are the volunteers? Can I have the wall of fame and wall of shame for this? So let me take the name so that you cannot turn back. Aditi, would you be able to get the thing done? Let me have the responsibility aligned. Yeah, perfect. So Aditi is in, guys. Aditya, attempt. Okay, perfect. Aditya will do that. Anshul, he is always in. I am
Yeah.
posing his name. Akshay,
Yeah.
he is pro. He is pro, I know. He will definitely be doing that. And my senior most colleagues, Amit, Hitesh, I know you are running short with the time
Yeah,
because of
yeah.
the thousands of other engagement, but still be writing your name because that will eventually help uh, us to understand the way how that has to be done in Python. Okay. And
Yes.
Anshul, you are already there. Hitesh, you have
Yes, yes, I'm
this,
good.
yeah, and Nikita is for sure with us. All right, guys. So we'll try to see how many of you are able to get this being cracked. At least the first one is the important one for you to get started. At least the first one, because this will definitely be having a flavor of a lot of other things. You will somehow be able to get the touch base with the lambda function as well, in case if you're going with that way. So it's all up to you how you want to get the task done. I'm not saying that you have to anyhow get this particular flavor being added, but I just want to get this thing done. So I hope the problem statement is very much clear, right? Total return value of each year and each segment means for each year. So there is a date particular, you have to first of all get the year and for that segment. Okay. So now let me talk about how to add a variable. Can you see? I just mentioned a new keyword there after the dot, giving a name called dummy and whose values are I'm passing there called check. So for that reason, I got HR dot, I can put it head, 2. So why there is not a scroller I got. So the right way is to always use this indexing. Now you will have that. Okay, so I should comment. It will not throw you an error. Why? Because it is not there into the picture. The variable is still not there. So now I will have head and 2. So can you see the variable being added now called dummy? So you cannot add a variable by dot operator. You can just access that. Okay, not correct because dot can be used just to access the column or a variable. In order to create a variable, you have to have this. This is again a basic way, but having said that part, you always have some way or other to create a to get your task done. So here also we have HR dot. Can you see this function? Where is that? Assign. So assign is going to be the function for you, which is being provided by your pandas for creating a variable. That's it. So point is very simple, guys. Going down the line, you just have to identify the relevant function for you to get your task done, be it assign for creating a variable or merge function to merge the data or append function to append the data. Feel free to use, and I would rather say you should be excited to use the Stack Overflow. Let me add that Stack Overflow as well into the list, Google or Stack. Okay. So when I say HR.assign, so the point is, let me tell you the approach. First of all, you need to think what needs to be done. आपको अगर पता चल गया कि that in a particular situation you have to add a variable, अगर आपको पता है how to add a variable, that's fine, but otherwise you can Google it out, Stack Overflow. You can get a function name. Let us suppose मुझे पता चल गया कि assign is the function name. What's the next step? Next step is to try to implement that function with certain values. अगर आपको लगता है कि आपका output अभी भी नहीं आया with the required way, you can reach out to the help window so as to understand each of those arguments, like what are the arguments you can now introduce in your function so as to get the required output being generated, is the only mantra here. And you guys being already working in the industry can understand that no one can learn those functions. It's like you cannot anyhow learn those functions. If I will print HR so these are all the attributes you have, and within those functions you have further functions. Can you see this? So can anyone of you in this batch can say ki they are good to learn all these functions, or can learn the further functions within those functions and so on and so forth? No, this is only for one thing. You have thousands of the other such similar things there into the picture. Got that? So I can also add a function, but the advantage of having this assign function is that you can create more than one variable into a one single function. Like HR.assign, and within this I can have so can you see now? So I have those two new variables introduced. So this is just for the explanatory purpose. You can have some mathematical calculations here, like you can have tax being calculated, which would be like 10 or 15%. So, I mean, needless to mention all these things. Obviously, you can have some mathematical calculations here in this equation using all the operators and the operands. Make sense? Like tax is equals to 0.15% of salary. Salary is not defined. Why? Because this has to be HR dot salary. Okay. So I would be having a variable called tax as well. Here you have that. Okay. Make sense?
And by default, how does it take the data type? Is it a varchar, char?
No. So you already have a data type coming from the data. You can change those data types using the functions what we discussed earlier. So based on the input, like if it is a character value, it would be taking it as an object. If it is being sourced from the numeric variable, the new variable will itself be the similar one what the source is it has been derived from.
Okay.
Okay, you can check that. There is a wonderful feature here called hrnow.info. And you have the detail of all those functions. Sorry, it's going to be like this. And here we have that. Okay, so this is like object because the value I have passed on was object, it's the character value. Okay.
Yeah.
Just a small thing. Assign. We
Mhm.
generally use assign for creating multiple variable.
Yes,
Okay.
it is more simpler, it is more faster because this comes as a dedicated function. Indexing and slicing is not the right way. Okay, so this is the one which we generally use in our components.
Okay.
See this, assign a new columns to a data frame returning a new object, a copy with the new columns added to the original ones. Existing columns that are reassigned will be overridden. So you should always look into the help window so as to identify what all sort of these things are talking about, and you will definitely be looking for the other combinations as well, the use of lambda and so on and so forth within the assign function, which is too early for us to get into all these troubles. because first of all, we would like to have the common and the basic understanding with all these things. Make sense? Online guys, anyone have any doubt, question or concern?
No.
So obviously this is like only getting printed. You can clearly see when I was passing the info, my variable called dummy2, dummy3 was not a part of my actual data. Can you see that? It's like only dummy. Why? Because I actually manually added that. So you have to write an expression like this in order to actually get these changes being saved. Okay. Otherwise, if you're not writing this, this is just getting printed in the output in the notepad file. So this is how you can add a variable with the assign function. Now the next thing what we will be discussing is uh, Amit, just wait for a couple of more minutes, please. If I have talked about adding a variable, I should also talk about deleting them. Okay, whatever the mess we have created, it's our job to clean that, isn't it so? Okay, yeah. All right. Now the next thing is how to delete the columns. So columns can be deleted with multiple ways. And the keyword del could be used for this job. Can you see this is turning out to be in green color, within which I can mention like dummy. And here we go. You can check the info, hr.info. Is it deleted now? HR. What happened, guys? Acha. Can you see this is throwing me an error? Why? Because this has already been deleted because I actually ran this cell twice, second time along with this info. Make sense? So this variable has been removed. For that reason, it is telling me, boss, आप गलत कर रहे हो. So you can see, dummy is still there. Is it so? Is it something a spelling mistake or what? Just a second. Why it was not throwing me an error in the first attempt? Should have been. Del. Dummy. DUMMY. Name is correct. Okay. So it would not be taking as a dot operator. It would be the indexing part. Just a second, and here we go. So syntactically, you have to be very particular and cautious. Don't get afraid if you even if you're getting some errors in the very first place. And this is the right one now. I can check it. Here you go. I'm very much sure you don't have the dummy variable. So this is the first way, first method. Second method, like in Python in our board, so you have multiple ways, guys. You can have second method like hr dot drop. Can you see a drop? A lot of functions are there, and within that, you can have the condition being passed, like what are the variables you want to drop, and for that reason, you have a syntax like this. So there are two scenarios. I will just be walking you through with that, and then we will close this conversation. So there, see these two situations. Data set name like hr dot in my case. In the very first code, I am passing the names of the columns under the argument called columns is equals to, with the help of which I will be dropping all those columns. This is the obvious way, and I should believe that you must not be having any problem with that. The second style of dropping the, so drop is actually a general function. First of all, this is not only to drop the columns, but you are looking to drop dummy one, some other dummy variables. This is the indexing typically you are mentioning, and then you are mentioning whether the names you have provided are the columns or the rows, because there are two axes, one for column and 0 stands for rows, guys. So typically drop could also be used for dropping the dedicated rows as well. Does that make sense? So axis 1 stands for the column, that these are all the columns you want to remove. Anyone having any doubt with that? All right, guys. So this is all from my side today. I hope you enjoyed the session thoroughly. Kindly get started working on the problem statements. The data files and the other required inputs has already been shared. Shall I call it a day now?
Yeah.
Perfect. Have a nice weekend ahead. Take care. Enjoy your day.
Thanks, Ankur.
Thank
You too.
Take care.
Thank you.
Yeah.